In this video, we're going to look at cumulative frequency and cumulative frequency graphs and how we can use these to find values from sets of data. But first of all, we need to look at a frequency table. This is a grouped frequency table because each of the weights bits are in groups. So the first one has the group 65 to 70, and what this table says is that there is one person who weighs between 65 kilograms and 70 kilograms. The next one says there are two people who weigh between 70 kilograms and 75 kilograms. Next one, there are 8 people who weigh between 75 kilograms and 80 kilograms. This is a grouped frequency table, and this is what we need to be able to do a cumulative frequency graph. First of all though, we need to do a cumulative frequency table, and to do a cumulative frequency table we need to add an extra column to our table, and that is going to be the cumulative frequency. And the way we work out the cumulative frequency is add up all the frequencies up to that point. The cumulative frequency is a running total of all the frequencies up to and including that weight. So, up to 70 there is one person. Up to 75 there's one plus the next two people from the next group, so there are 3 people. Up to 80 there are the 3 people we've already got plus the next 8, which gives us 11. Up to 85 there are the 11 we've already got plus the new 16, which is 27. Up to 90 we've got the 27 plus the next 21, which gives us 48. Up to 95 we have the 48 plus the new 19, which is 67. Up to 100 we have an extra 8, which takes us to 75. Up to 105 we have an extra 3, which takes us to 78. Up to 110 there's one more, 79. And finally up to 115 there is one final one, which takes us to a total of 80. So in this case we have 80 pieces of data, and the cumulative frequency shows you how many people, in this case, there are up to a certain weight. Now we can plot the cumulative frequency table on a graph. So first of all we set up our axes, and in this case our axes go from the frequency up the side there. The highest cumulative frequency was 80, so we've got it going up to 100, and along the bottom the lowest weight was 65, the highest weight was 115, so we've got our scale going from 60 to 120. So now if we put the cumulative frequency table on here as well, we can see what we need to do. Cumulative frequency, we always plot the higher value of the range of the bracket that we're looking at against the cumulative frequency. So to start with, we're going to plot 70 weight against a frequency of 1. So that is down here. At 70 we put a dot at 1. Next one, at 75 we put a dot at 3. 75, we're here now, we're going to put a dot at 3. So at 75 we put a dot at 3, and then at 80 we're going to put a dot at 11. So at 80 we go up to 11, which is there, and we carry on doing that all the way up till we've plotted all the points. Once we've got all the points plotted, we draw a smooth curve through the points, so we get something like this. There are the points marked as squares and a smooth curve going through all of those points. This is the cumulative frequency graph, And remember, the most important thing is when you're plotting it, you always use the upper value of the range against the cumulative frequency value, which we get by adding up all the frequency values. Once we have the cumulative frequency graph, we can use it to find various bits of information from the data. So here's a clean version of our table and our graph. And if we've got that, we can work out several things. We can work out the median, which, remember, the median is the middle value. We can work out the lower quartile, we can work out the upper quartile, and we can work out from those the interquartile range. Now, the lower quartile is the 25th percent value. The upper quartile is the 75% value, and the interquartile range is the difference between them. So the lower quartile, sometimes abbreviated as LQ, is a quarter of the way through the data, just like the median is halfway through the data. The upper quartile is 3/4 of the way through the data, like the median is halfway through the data, and the interquartile range is the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. So let's look at those first, and then we'll look at some other things we can do with our cumulative frequency graph. To find the median, we need to find the middle of the frequencies. The frequencies, the highest frequency is 80. So the median is going to be at the frequency 40. So we draw a line across from 40 until we hit our graph, and then once we hit our graph, we draw down from that point until we hit the bottom axis. And from that, we can see what the median is, and in this case, we can see that it is 88. So the median is equal to 88 kilograms. The lower quartile and upper quartile are done in much the same way. The lower quartile, well, if the middle value was the 40th frequency, the lower quartile is going to be at the 20th frequency. So we draw a line across from 20 to the graph, and then we draw a line down from there until we hit the axis, and this time we see that it is 83. So the lower quartile is 83 kilograms, and similarly for the upper quartile, 3/4 of the way up to 80. Well, that is what we get when we add the median and the lower quartile together. That's a half plus a quarter gives us 3/4. So that's at 60. So we go across from 60 until we hit the graph, and then we go down from 60 until we hit the axis. And once again we read off that value, which in this case is 93. So our upper quartile is 93 kilograms. The interquartile range then is equal to 93 minus 83, which is 10. So the interquartile range gives us an idea of how the data is spread. 50% of the data is between the lower quartile and the upper quartile. So 50% of the data is within 10 kilograms of each other. We can also make other assessments of the data from our cumulative frequency graph. So let's look at another clean page of this graph. So here we have the graph again. This time we're going to look at values less than and values more than a certain weight. So if we wanted to know how many people were less than let's say 83 kilograms. From there, we go along the bottom to 83, we go up until we hit the graph, and then we go across until we hit the frequency axis. So in this case, there are 20 people less than 83 kilograms, because there are 20 this side of 83. We can do a similar thing if we want to know more than. How many are there more than 92 kilograms? Well, we do a similar thing. We draw up from 92. I'm going to need to scroll up a little bit until we hit our graph, and then from there we go across until we hit the other axis, and we can see that that value is 56. But that tells us there are 56 less than 92. But we wanted to know how many there were more than 92. But there are 80 people in total. 56 are less than, so if we take away the 56, we get the answer is 24. There are 24 people more than 92 kilograms. Finally, the last thing we might want to find is percentiles. So we might want to know what the 85th percentile is. The 85th percentile. And percentile means all the people up to that percentage. So we want to know the value that has 85% of the people less than that weight. So the value, the weight that has 85% of the people less than it. And the way we do this is we find 85% of our total frequency, so 85% of 80, which with a bit of calculation we find is 68. And then we do much the same as we did for the median and the lower quartile, but we use this value here. So to find the 85th percentile, we go across from 68, which is here, and that brings us across to, I'm going to have to move this out of the way a little bit so we can see what's going on. There we go. That 68 brings us across through that point and hits the graph there. And then we go down from there, scroll down so we can actually see it, and it hits there. And we can see that that is, looks like 95. So the 85th percentile is 95. So 85% of the people weigh less than 95 kilograms. So that is how we turn a frequency table into a cumulative frequency table, by adding up the frequencies. We then plotted a cumulative frequency graph by plotting the maximum point of each of the ranges against the cumulative frequency. We then joined the points with a smooth curve, and then using our graph we found the median by taking the middle frequency. We found the lower quartile by finding a quarter of the frequency. We found the upper quartile by taking 3/4 of the frequency. The interquartile range is the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile. If we want to find the number of people less than a value, we go up from that value and then across to find the frequency. If we want to find how many people are more than a value, we go up from that value across to find the frequency less than that value. and then take that away from the total frequency. And finally, if we want to find a percentile, that is the value that has a certain percentage less than that value, we find what percentage of the total frequency, so 85% of the total frequency, go across from the frequency, the cumulative frequency side of the graph, and then down until we find the percentile value. And that is all there is to cumulative frequency tables and graphs.